Hello, you're watching World Talks on TVP World. My name is Sasha Farbach. A shrinking river is exposing one of Europe's biggest climate vulnerabilities. The Danube's record low water levels have pushed nuclear reactors in Hungary and Romania to the brink, cut hydropower output in Serbia, and forced governments into emergency measures just as another extreme heat wave drives electricity demand even higher. And joining us now is Zuzanna Novak, Energy and Climate Policy Independent Analyst. Thanks for joining us here. Morning.
Thanks for having me. Good morning.
So we've been watching a terrible heat wave, all these factors, and now we have this water shortage all combined, really. How bad is it at the moment? I mean, looking specifically at the Danube, record low levels, how much worse can it get?
Well, from hydrological perspective, I think that there's still room for conditions becoming worse and worse for the situation. From energy security perspective, the situation might become, it's already a very, I would say, serious one, and it can become worse if this crisis, this hydrological crisis, is going to continue. The electricity adequacy crisis in the region will become more and more severe. All generation units, or the most important generation units in the region, nuclear power plants, but also gas-fired power plants or coal power plants, all the others, they require huge amounts of water in order to cool the systems. So if there is no water available for cooling, this means that this electricity generation system is at the verge of collapse. It doesn't have to go that way, but all depends on the current weather conditions.
Mm-hmm. And just how serious it can get, unfortunately, as you've just sort of alluded to, it may well get worse. Let's just hear from the new Prime Minister of Hungary, Peter Magyar, who addressed his country about this issue on Monday. Let's just hear what he had to say.
We are facing the most critical 5 days, since the Meteorological Service is predicting extreme heat in these 5 days. By Wednesday, temperatures could rise above 42 degrees, and there is also a chance that the absolute heat record, which was broken not so long ago, will be broken again.
So we have a personal appeal there to the Hungarian people. I mean, one of those things is also that nuclear power plant in Pax, I think one of the largest providers of electricity and energy for Hungary. If we're looking also at this, just what he's said, if we're looking at the drought, if we're looking at these kind of reductions, where in your mind should the priorities really be? Should it be in terms of ordinary households? Should it be the economy, energy continuation? Where do we prioritize that?
The priority goes towards industry and big industrial players. If they reduce their consumption, this means that a huge part of the economy might be protected, especially households. When it comes to the rules on how to behave in such a situation, there are specific protocols within every government, whether it's Hungary, Romania, but also Poland. So the first ones to go off are industrial players. Then public buildings, huge malls. At the very end of the story are the shutdowns for the average citizens. But what we can see right now in Hungary and also in other countries of the region is that the governments are usually using a very alarming tone in order to inform the societies about what is going on. And this alarming tone is mainly used in order to encourage all the citizens, everyone in the country, to make this common effort to lower the demand for electricity. So the scenarios are clear, but what can be done is just a common effort in order to reduce demand for electricity.
You mentioned the priority really goes to average households. You said industry has to suffer first. Let's talk about that suffering, because I mean we have also the announcement that in Romania, for instance, also suffering from this, Dacia and Ford plants have decided to cut their production up until around the 19th of August. I think other businesses as well. I mean, this is also going to be an economic shock. So can you tell us a little bit, if this continues on such a scale, not just in Romania but other countries, how much of an economic burden all this would be?
The losses from such a situation are very hard to calculate, because on the one hand, we've got the shortage of electricity. If there is shortage of electricity in the region, all those who are consuming energy, they're also paying higher bills right now. So one element of the story is just increase in prices when the supply is limited. The second part of the story are the losses generated by those companies, those actors, economic actors that are currently not producing, they are not serving the purpose that they're made for. So this means for them enormous losses. And finally, we've got other things that are even harder to calculate in such a situation, because we have to take into account life losses because of the extreme heat, but also from the lack of basic services. If we diminish the usage of air conditioning, for example, in hospitals, if electricity becomes unavailable, this means potential for death for elderly people and other patients in the hospitals. So this is a safety issue. If the scenario goes into the direction of a blackout, then the losses will be more and more important, related, for example, to traffic, transportation, once again, healthcare, and so on and so on. It is also about agriculture. It is about a whole economy that has to stop to some extent. So I wouldn't give you any numbers. We can calculate that, yes, for Hungary, it would be tens of millions of euros per day. For Romania, it will be a little bit less. But I mean, these are just precise numbers for a very specific part of the problem, not the problem overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that problem overall, I mean, it seems to also be compounded. We have this heat wave. We have, I think the EU has recorded hundreds of thousands, I think well over 430,000 hectares burned. That's a record from the previous period a year ago. But at the same time, that's also my question. We've had wildfires, droughts in the past. We're looking at these rivers very much at low capacity. It's not just the Danube, it's also in Germany and the Netherlands with the Rhine. It's the Po River in Italy. So I'm just wondering what measures have been taken. Have they been taken, maybe not enough, by policymakers and authorities to avert such crises? Or what do you suggest, what can be done to avert this in the future? Because I'm afraid it's probably not the last time we'll see these kind of droughts.
Unfortunately, what we see is that changing weather conditions and at the end, changing climate is moving faster than the decision-making processes within our countries. So we can say that many of the plants, from this energy perspective, many of the plants that were built 40, 50 years ago, they were designed using, of course, historical river conditions that no longer reflect today's climate. And I would say that what we have to concentrate on is to include into energy security considerations climate adaptation, because those conditions that were once treated long time ago as exceptional, they are becoming they should become at least part of normal energy security planning. Of course, we can think about demand reduction, which can stabilize the power system just as effectively as additional generation in critical hours. But this is not the full picture. What we have to concentrate on is maybe adaptation of the existing plants for situations where river levels are lower, which means that there is no availability of water supplies. But this is also about building more and more interconnections between countries, because at the very end, interconnections, they can allow us to exchange electricity freely between the countries and maybe help those countries which are in the biggest trouble in Europe. It is also about building storage capacity. So there are a lot of solutions that could be implemented, but we don't have the proper pace of it.
Mm-hmm. Not the proper pace, but the need is imperative now. Also curious, because a lot of these energy facilities, we're talking about nuclear, about cooling, requires a lot of water, coal at the same time, hydro, of course, naturally. So are there maybe in the energy mix alternatives that now policymakers should be aiming to build or prioritize in future? Because I think I can imagine that, for instance, solar might be a better alternative than maybe just betting on one or the other. So just get curious about your thoughts there.
The problem with other solutions is that we should have a lot of them all at the same time. The basic idea that is the most important in such a situation is diversification of supplies. So if one element of our energy system fails, we have to be able to replace it somehow. If we just take the case of Hungary, Hungary is extremely exposed right now because half of its domestic electricity production comes from this nuclear power plant in Paks. If it goes off entirely, it means that half of the electricity production has to be replaced somehow. How it can be done? With, for example, gas units. But they have also had in the recent days, they had the biggest issue with their largest gas unit. It has been repaired, so it is operational right now. But this infrastructure was also not available. In addition to this, the moment when the system can collapse in Hungary is early evening. So the moment when solar generation, which is very important in Hungary, so during the day, it's not a problem. During a sunny day, it's absolutely not a problem for a system. But in the evening, when the consumption is still very high because of the heat, because of air conditioning use, and so on and so on. If at this moment the lights go off, there is no solar generation capacity, this is the most vulnerable moment of the system. There should be something else to be added to the system. So it is a tricky moment right now if half of the generation is simply at risk of being completely cut.
Right, so it does seem to be energy diversification still the operative word of the day, but it seems many struggles ahead as we have this heat wave and lots of demand on power. Look, thanks so much for that. Really appreciate your time today. That was our guest here, Zuzanna Novak, Energy and Climate Policy Independent Analyst. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching World Talks, but stay right here on TVP World for more. Goodbye.